everyone, and welcome to the Survivor Stockwatch podcast. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and I am here today to talk through the latest episode of Survivor and rate the players from 1 to 10 based on how well we think they are doing in the game. With me to do so this week is Grace. How you doing, Grace?
I'm doing great, Taran. You're doing great with the Stockwatch and the digital daily updates. So I just wanted to say, in vein of Carson Garrett, great job. Keep it up. Good work.
Oh boy, thank you.
I'm not actually sick, so but yeah, good work. You got it.
Yeah, this was a rough episode for we had some vomiting, we had some farting, and let me tell you, I was trying to eat dinner while watching this.
Yeah. Yeah, didn't go down well.
It was actually fine for the most part. For some reason, I fare better with the vomit than the farting.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's fair.
I think mostly because, and I apologize for the listeners of this podcast, but maybe you should have anticipated it with what we saw in the episode. But it was the fact that the shorts were muddy.
The visual of them being caught in the mud, the mud net, which does have a particular, imagery to it as well. And then the farting while he's covered in mud. Yeah. Yeah. Jeff loved it. Jeff thought it was very funny. Yeah.
So this is what Jeff said in response to the fart.
That was nice. Well timed.
Glad I'm not up there. I think he added as well. Which, because of the smell or because the challenge is tough? I don't understand. I don't get it. Yeah. Anyway.
There has to be something going on in Jeff's head that's because Jeff really loves to be like, this is high art, right? This is the Survivor. At one point in his life, he wanted to go and do something different. It didn't really work out. He's back to Survivor. He's trying to make Survivor and I appreciate that to a degree. But there has to be something going on in his head that's like, okay, this man just farted during my challenge. And how do I respond to it?
That was nice. Well timed.
Yeah, and he's like, glad I'm not up there. Challenge is so tough. People are just farting. It's tough. He did say this week, right? Was this week where he said he views Survivor through the eyes of children, which a fart joke.
Hey,
he's nailing it. He's killing it. He kept that in. Didn't get cut from the edit. So,
there you go.
Yeah. This is just the high strategic talk people wanted from a podcast with you, right?
Truly, that's we finally got a strategic episode, and this is how we start the strategy podcast.
That's right.
This was a good episode. I mean, here's the thing. I think that expectations and the bar for expectations pretty low after the last couple, at least from my point of view. So the fact that we got. I know a lot of people have been joking about great twist this week. Everyone had a vote. Whoa.
Wow.
But the fact that we just got straight up Survivor was kind of refreshing, and it was nice. And I think it was a decent episode of if we take this version of Survivor and compare it to other regular episodes of Survivor that aren't very special episodes of Survivor, then I don't think it was amazing, but I did like it. It was good.
I mean, it was pretty down the line. I was surprised when I was rewatching it, and the first thing that was just what about Franny? And then they're like, well, what if the 6 of us just vote out Brandon? And then that's pretty much what happens, plus an idol. It's not exactly what happens. There's some very interesting stuff with the middle that we can talk about. It definitely is. Yeah, it's not amazing. It does have a successful idol play, which I think is the first time in a few seasons we've had somebody playing on somebody else, which is quite fun. And yeah, it definitely. I mean, it's fun in the sense that it shakes up what was sort of the status quo of the game, but how much can you argue that was the status quo of the game, considering how weird the game has been so far? So yeah, I like the episode as well.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it wouldn't be this podcast without me complaining about the lack of information, but I would have liked a little more information. I'm still confused about exactly how things went down within Tika in particular. But I think the big picture of Tika playing the middle and making this very interesting move that I'm assuming they're making because we didn't actually hear them spell it out for us, but like continuing to play the middle by splitting their own votes, making it seem like they're not a tight trio, and also forcing one side to flush an idol in order to take out the other side. Very, very good play from Tika. I just wish I knew more about how intentional it was and how they decided to orchestrate it.
Yeah, Carson and Jam Jam have I think it's very early on in the episode. I think it's before the immunity challenge, any of that. Of this is great. Now we just got to keep going back and forth. And so
Mhm.
that does seem, and I feel like this plan works out well in the fact that those two in particular voted with the RHAP members and essentially have their votes nullified, knowing an idol was coming, so that they can vote with those remaining three potentially next time to now get rid of Ahsoka members. So I do feel like that's intentional. I get I know as much as you know, but they do say let's keep going back and forth is what they say,
Mhm.
and this move certainly sets them up to do that. I think, and it's kind of, yeah, it's fun. Carolyn votes with the Sokas, and Carson and Jam Jam both don't. They both vote for Franny, get their vote nullified.
Yeah, well, so based on the information that I feel like I got is that first of all, Carson continues to play extremely well. Both sides think that they just fully have Carson, as in Ratu thinks that Carson is one of them to the point where they're saying
It is our game to lose. If it is not a Rat2 member who wins this game, we mess that up.
which made me very convinced Ratu is not winning this game.
I would 100% agree. That's not a great. This is the best. Like you have, as if you're Kane, you have to film this confessional. Like they're making you film this confessional. Bad news when you actually see it on the show. It's like this is bad. That's not good.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Hey, Kane.
Don't get cocky, kid.
I mean, he didn't get voted out, but yeah, not great. Not great.
And then Soka also trusts Carson so much that apparently they weren't supposed to say anything to Jam Jam. It was only supposed to go to Carson. So my understanding is that Soka, because the biggest confusing thing, and let me just pull up the photos for this because it might help if you're watching along. So I've divided them into their original tribes here. So you have Ratu on the bottom, Soka in the middle, and then Tika at the top of this graphic. And so we have Danny, Heidi, and Franny. If they have Tika, if they have there's ultimately 10 votes total. They need 6 to win. If they have Tika, they don't need an idol. They don't really need an idol. Lauren has an extra vote, but they only have 4 votes there. If Tika is with them. So I'm assuming that the point here of Tika continuing to play up like they're not together is saying, hey, Carson and or Jam Jam might vote with us, but what if Carolyn still probably votes the other way, even though Carolyn just cried for Jam Jam at Tribal last night, so I don't know how that is going. Maybe Carolyn and Jam Jam are voting the other way. Maybe Carson is the only one with them. But basically, from Soka's point of view, it feels like Danny, Franny, and Heidi are thinking Carson is our 4th vote. And then we'll use the idol on Franny and we'll take out Brandon. We don't need Jam Jam or Carolyn, except Heidi screws that up and pitches to Jam Jam and lets him know about the idol. The thing that confused me was, okay, first of all, do you even need Carson? A Carson is a 4th vote for you, but if you think that Soka or that Ratu has Jam Jam and Carolyn plus an extra vote, then you're anticipating that they are able to split votes 4 and 3 or 3 and 3. So maybe, if you did get 4, that would beat out a 3, but it would still tie a 4. And so is it worth risking giving away your idol plan to get Carson on the chance that they split their votes and you happen to guess on the right one? They clearly trusted Carson a lot, right? Definitely not worth talking to Jam Jam, though, I would imagine. I mean, I guess that gets you to 5 and it guarantees you win a split vote situation. But it's just at that point, you also don't need to play the idol anymore. Right? It's just I guess you play the idol in case they split votes, and if they don't split votes, you still need the idol. It's just a very complicated scenario of like, who do they think they have? And if they think they have a certain amount of people, why do they still feel like they need to play the idol?
Yeah, so it's a very good point. I not throw through that. Like, if you are just a 6, you don't need to play an idol. There's no hint of anybody on. Jamie has a fake idol. Is that right? That's right. She's a fake.
Fake idol that they do believe it's real.
They do believe it's real. So if there's any
I think-
rumors of that going around, but yeah, no, it's a good point. I think the piece of why you do it, at least this will be contradictory because I can see it from why the reason to tell all 3 of them of like the 6 is it's a big trust building move from specifically Danny to say, you know, I'm going to play my idol on my ally. You know, if we all vote together, we don't need the idol, but let's just do it to be sure. I'll just play my idol. Let's do it. Let's get one of those 4 out. My idol's out of the game. Like that's, but then from the way it all plays out, it does seem like, yeah, they only want to tell Carson. And so now if you're like, I guess they just trust Carson's, and it's like only pulling in Carson, and they're worried about exactly what potentially happens, which is that Jam gets word and then is like, I think I'm gonna go tell. I think I should probably go tell Rat. And he, again, we don't really find out that I presume he does not, because everybody seems pretty surprised when an idol gets played on Franny. They all voted for Franny, so yeah, seems like Jam does not tell Ratu. But that is the thing that they were worried about. It seems that like Danny is pretty like he's like, oh no, maybe I got to play this thing for myself. Once he finds out that Jam and Carolyn now both know that his idol is in play tonight. So I see it from a trust building move of that's why you use the idol and you can pull Carson in. But the thing that I don't think entirely works about that, it's not like a perfect move from that perspective, is that if you're 4 out of 10 and you're going to idol out a Ratu, that's fine for this vote. It's still not great for next vote. You definitely need 5 for next vote. You need the 5 into 9. I've done some math, and you need 5 into 9 to have a majority.
Right.
So you need to like tell at least 2 of, if you're doing it as a trust building exercise, you need to tell at least 2 of them. So why didn't they tell 2 of them?
Right. And that's a little bit of what's confusing here. Like, if you have Jam, then you kind of have the votes and you don't need to play the idol. If you don't have Jam, he's probably ratted you out and the idol will be played incorrectly. So at that point, I was like, he's probably not going to play the idol at all once Jam knows. The only reason to play the idol is if you think Jam won't rat you out, that Carolyn will then also vote against you, and that Lauren will play her extra vote. And to make it 6-5, all on, you know, somebody that is, it's all on Franny, and that you think you're going to block 6 votes to your own 5 with Carson and Jam. And then to make it even more confusing to me is that, okay, it's now set up that Danny, Franny, and Heidi and Carson were all on board for this play, but that Jam also knew. So when it comes down to the vote, and there are 4 votes on Brandon, who do they think that 4th vote is? Do they think that Jam voted against them without ratting out the idol? Do they think it's Jam? Do they think it's Carson? Did they agree with Carson and Jam? Did they allow Carson to vote with the other side? I don't know.
Well, the other piece is there, we never really see that Carolyn learns that the idol isn't, but I almost maybe wonder if she actually is looped in more than we saw on the show, that she's actually the piece, that it's actually not. It does seem that they are the least trustworthy of Jam. The news when like Jam knows about the idol is Danny being like heartbroken, like gutted, like sad.
Well, Heidi did just try to vote Jam out in the previous tribal with her advantage, right?
Right. And they seem to like make up to a degree, but you know, whatever. But Carolyn is the one who I'm actually wondering, is she sort of looped in on this whole thing that we never got to see? Because the story is the story that is, you know, that is more interesting is like Danny's going to play his idol. This plan should work. Jam might rat it out to the Ratus. then a tribal he does not end up doing that, and we get a successful idol play. And there's a lots more to figure out like next episode. But is Carolyn just like, I mean, she votes for Brandon, so she's with
Right.
the three. So I actually wonder if just in this whole story that we're being told, and this actually doesn't bode super well for a Carolyn win. Like
Yeah.
if she's like in this move entirely from the whole thing, and it's entirely edited out, that she knows that the idols is like, I presume she does. I don't think not Carson or Jam Jam potentially keep that information from her. So I think she knows. So that's not great that she's seemingly maybe super in the loop, but that's not the story that gets told this episode.
Yeah, and that's part of what confused me with the edit is that we don't see Carolyn really involved in this vote at all, and yet she is actually the only one of the three of them to vote Brandon. Both Carson and Jam Jam vote Franny, knowing that their vote is going to be nullified, which is weird, right?
But if that's the five, though, if Franny, Danny, and Heidi are like, well, we got Carson and Carolyn, so let's just roll with this thing. Don't tell Jam Jam. We really don't trust Jam Jam. There is a moment like back at camp where Ratu is like, you thought we were going to vote you out? Like, come on. Like, which, like, whatever. Everybody's playing and everyone's lying and whatever. But maybe they just really don't trust Jam Jam.
I mean, maybe, but then who do they think of those? Like, do they think that Carson is the one that voted with them? Do they think that Jam Jam is the one that voted with them?
So
It's
actually,
weird.
in my story, they're actually yeah, right. Well, I think in my opinion, they probably think one of Carson or Carolyn voted with them. I think.
Right. I would imagine, but then why wouldn't the other rat out the idol play? Right. Why wouldn't Jam Jam rat out the idol play if he's not with them? Why would he vote for Franny knowing that they planned on playing an idol on Franny?
Yeah, I do think the Tika being in the middle thing, I think this is so fun they're in the middle. They split their votes. Two of them vote incorrectly, basically. One of them votes with the group. And now next week, they can sort of potentially hedge their bets between which side they go with. Like we can continue. Now we can just like say like, just kidding. We were fooling you last episode. We weren't with you. We're going to vote another Ratu, and they vote out Kane. Or they say, let's flip back. And now we vote out, say, Danny or Franny. I do feel like the point you're maybe getting to is that Ratu might be able to see through like everyone might be able to see through a little bit, and not Ratu. I think actually more specifically Soka's like, well, you could have just voted with us, but you actually voted for Franny knowing an idol was going to be played. And actually, if I didn't play my idol, like you maybe said you were going to vote out Franny, she would have got voted out. And I can see what you're doing, which is playing the middle. And maybe Soka and Ratu are like, we probably got to get rid of a Tika.
Yeah, like I could see why maybe Carson, I mean, given what we were told, I could see why maybe Carson votes with Franny, Danny, and Heidi, while Jam Jam and Carolyn don't, to make it seem like there's still a separation there. Carson was the one they went to initially. And then, you know, Carson can be like, I don't know why Jam Jam didn't vote with us, but didn't rat us out. Maybe he just wanted the idol flushed. Maybe he's trying to do something, but I'm still with you guys. Well, Carson could then also be like, yeah, I think Jam Jam flipped on us to Ratu, right? Like he could, like, you know, there's a world where one of them can get through this, but all of Tika can't collectively. Like somebody's going to take a fall for playing the middle here and flipping with either side. And so I would imagine it's, you know, one of Carson, Jam Jam, or Carolyn is going to be in trouble with Soka, and then one of them is going to be in trouble with Ratu at the very least, which is okay, depending on who that person is and how things move from there. As long as they're able to keep the separation, then they can maintain the war between Ratu and Soka, and nobody has to deal with Tika as long as they remain separate figures.
Yeah, I do actually maybe, despite thinking, I think before coming out of this pod that Carson was maybe in the best spot. He does seem to be the most social dynamic, but that's risky to be the most sort of you know, likable person. If there's a whiff that you're actually betraying me, that maybe hurts more than where people think. I think Jam Jam has a bit of a reputation of being a little of strategic, and just the way his demeanor is like, well, obviously you're not going to lie to my face if you're voting me out. So like, you know, if you lie, you're going to lie. You got to do better than that, right? He does have this like sort of like jokey, I don't know, like thing that maybe makes him not as trustworthy. And I also think Carolyn maybe has this image of not being a great game. I mean, very funny to think that Danny and Brandon, like Danny's voting for Brandon, despite their like little summit where Danny and Brandon are like, we're gonna work together, bro, and just completely ignoring Carolyn. But I feel like this potentially has the there's a chance that this blows up the most on Carson, unless they're all gonna try to lie and say they were the vote with but even I don't know, I don't know. It's just so tough being the likable person in the middle because at some point he's going to have to show his cards, and one team might feel very betrayed by that.
Yeah, I mean it's a tricky thing to do. I think that one of the things that it's a lot easier to play the middle in Big Brother, and by easier I don't mean easy. You often can get in trouble playing the middle in Big Brother as well, but it's easier because your options are limited when it comes down to the vote, and you can kind of work more behind the scenes. In Survivor, everybody votes for anybody, and if you're not and a lot of these votes can be, very tricky. Like, it's like this came down to an idol play and certain votes going in certain places. And if you don't vote in your certain way, then it's not going to work out. And it's like, in Big Brother, it's like, well, if you don't have the votes, then everybody kind of all piles on and it doesn't matter and you can hide your cards. In Survivor, you tend to just vote where the vote is supposed to go for the people you're working with. So it's a tricky thing to maintain this middle position, and that's why you get the pendulum strategy, which is just full on betray one side and then come back to the other, and then betray them and come back to the other, which is also tricky to pull off. But at least it's not trying to pretend that you're actually still working with both sides. It's just like, hey, I'm going to help you over here. I'm going to help you over here. And so I think what they're doing is interesting, and I'm intrigued to see if they're able to pull it off because I think there is validity to the idea of, okay, well, one of us can get caught over here, one of us can get caught over here. The key is to make sure that they don't think that we're actually together in this, that we are a three, because if we can continue to get them to pick each other off, eventually we'll get to a point where our numbers are enough to wipe out the rest. And so that's going to be where things, where it comes down to, right? And so you also have to be willing to potentially take a hit with certain people at certain times. And it's just like, how much of that is being coordinated by them right now? That's sort of what I mean when I'm like, how intentional is this? Like, have they decided, okay, so Carson is going to take a hit with Soka. Carolyn's going to be the vote for Soka. Carolyn's going to get in with with Franny, Danny, and Heidi. Carson is going to be like, yeah, I betrayed you. I went with them. I went with Ratu, which doesn't, again, really make sense because Carson knew about the idol. And so if he tries to go with Ratu, then Soka can rat him out that he knew about the idol and didn't tell Ratu. So I would assume that Carson would want to flip to Soka and let Jam Jam and Carolyn go to Ratu. And then they can still do the same thing with Jam Jam, but maybe Carolyn can be in there with them. But Carolyn's the one person that actually didn't vote with them. So it's just like, it's very messy. And I would love to know the details of how they're trying to pull this off. But it's very interesting.
Yeah, so part of me is like, why do they split there? Which is this? It's right. Like now, all the tribes are now 3 people, so it's the 4, the Ratu 4 certainly seemed like the big target, but now they're 3. There's an entirely possible, it's entirely possible the next episode it's like, yeah, but now Tika's just as strong as Ratu, so like we got to worry about them. And the plan seemingly is to lower the threat level of the 3 of them as a group. The fact that they did not vote together at least might plant some seeds that they're separate. The other piece, I do feel like, I wonder if, there is a possibility that Jam Jam was going to vote for Brandon, but he just got saved basically from Ratu, right? Despite Heidi making, trying to get it onto Jam Jam instead of Matt, Ratu saves him. So I could see that he wants to, because someone in the chat points out he has a mischievous aura. If he can say, like, look, I voted with you. I am with you. I voted with you. You saved me and now I voted with you, and solidify that. Carson, I think the reason he votes with them is, again, I think that piece of he has the best relationship with both sides, and I guess he's not sticking with one side, but that's why I feel like he stays, and Carolyn can go with the. So it is very unclear why who votes which way is something that they obviously didn't want to tell us. And sorry, the last piece I wanted to say is that I do wonder if they decided that 2 of the Tikas should be voting for Franny, because if if it's a 5-5 split, I mean, there's the idol in play, but is there a chance that, like, I guess without it, if Danny doesn't play the idol and it's a 5-5 split, there's also the extra vote, and so you want the most. It does feel like the odds are maybe the most in, but they know an idol is going to be played, so all of this is moot, I guess. The point I'm trying to make is, like, if they think for whatever reason idol won't get played and it ends up being, it's like they want the most in their favor to be with the group where they think maybe the majority of, like,
Like if Danny's
Franny,
lying about the idol and it's actually fake, or maybe he's just mistaken about his idol being
he's
real.
wrong, right? So you get the most amount of people on potentially what's the most likely outcome of the vote. Plus, that so a 5-5 split. Well, Lauren plays her extra vote. Now it's 6-5, right? So that's the other piece of maybe in their head. If we get the most people voting with Ratu, if Franny goes home, we have the most people with them. The other way is like, well, we knew it was happening anyway, and we were voting. It's just subterfuge,
Yeah, and I would say there's also the possibility of Danny, Franny, and Heidi being okay with Carson voting with Ratu to maintain his cover. It's not really the best play because, if they allow
it gives him a lot of room. Yeah.
It gives him room.
Yeah.
However, there is some validity to it where it's like, okay, if Carson continues to pretend to be with them, then he'll continue to get information from them. And if we are able to find the replacement idol, then Carson can give us the information again if it works.
And if they trust him more than Jam as well, right?
Exactly. And if something goes wrong, maybe they don't find an idol, maybe they find themselves on the wrong sides of the vote, you can always just rat Carson out eventually. Say, hey, just so you know, Carson did know about that idol. He's been pretending to work with you guys. It's still a tricky proposition, but it's not something that I think is impossible to have happened. It's just like, again, there are many different ways this could have played out for lots of different reasons. It's and this is again why, like, I would love to have seen more about what was happening here, but it was still a good episode.
Yeah, it's very fun. The fact that there's this much to, like, think about, and I think Rob said this. I was trying to articulate this point very early on in the season, and then Rob came back and articulated better. But basically said the show is probably more fun if you're not invested in it, because like I was talking about how my mom and dad watch the show and then they immediately turn it off. And my mom does some podcasts. My dad just like he's like, well, see you next week. It doesn't. He was like, no, that's kind of entertaining. It doesn't think about it. And then we're sitting here like there's a lot to talk about, but also because we have no answers, it's a tad bit frustrating. Like doesn't make it that like a episode,
I have been curious to see like what more like people outside of the online community are feeling about it, and so far I think the responses that I've seen are kind of like, it's not really, season is not really working for me so far, but they can't really put their finger on why. And so I'd be curious to continue to see how people are enjoying the season, but I do think there was, this episode has a great, I continue to like, not structural editing I'm frustrated with in terms of like what they're showing us and why, but like moment to moment editing, scene to scene is still really cool. This whole segment where Danny plays the idol for Franny, the music kicking in is really, I'm going to play the whole thing because it's just so epic.
I got something for you, Jeff. The place for Franny.
Okay.
Reaction shots of everyone. It's just cool. The music is great. It feels epic. I love this moment.
Yeah, it's good. There are still like really fun moments, I think, within the show. It's that it's an entertaining result, then we just like didn't get to see exactly how it got put together. This is the thing. Yeah.
All right. Should we rate the players?
Let's do it. Let's rate them.
Let's do it. Okay, so as I said, if you're watching the video, I have separated the players into their original tribes, since that does appear to be how they are structured in the game right now. And they are also currently organized by how high they were rated in the previous Stockwatch within their own tribe. So Carson and Jam Jam were the two highest last episode, but Brandon was the highest rated person on Ratu last week, and I think Lauren winning that immunity, because
Yeah.
this probably would have been Lauren, right? With her if they thought they could take out the 2 votes, they probably would have tried.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's what Danny says. He says, "Yeah, I'll team up with her, but I really still want to vote her out." So I think that and if he's gonna play the idol, he might have some sway in who gets votes. And I think it might be Lauren. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's run through some of these players here. Let's start with Brandon, who will drop to the bottom here of Ratu. Hard to pinpoint like a specific thing that Brandon did wrong in this episode. I think that he made the right call last episode, taking out Matt. Although maybe it wasn't. We kind of know it wasn't, because Matt was looking to turn on Danny. And if he had taken out Jam Jam, it removes Tika's ability to play the middle. Based on his read, it was the right move, but his read was actually wrong, right?
Right. I mean, there is such a theme in this new era of Survivor that you just can't be at the top of the heap. You can't be
Mhm.
perceived to be the most powerful or the best player or to have just made a big move. That's like such, that's when they're going to start hunting you. So I feel like what is the mistake is, yeah, I do think there's a degree at which if you get rid of Jam Jam, Carson and Tika is 2 and Soka is 4. And that seems like, oh no, that's like, 4 and 4. That's bad. But the whole mistake this episode is thinking that like we have the advantage with 4. I mean, granted, they think they have Carson and Jam Jam, so they think they have 6, but they don't, right? Again, that read is wrong. So I feel like the mistake that gets made by like this is basically all of Ratu is potentially actually like being so stuck in on sticking together as a group. And I know that like the other groups are also sticking together as a group, so that becomes a little tricky. But I do think like you have the most number of people, so you then are the target. And it does feel like Brandon is a bit of the like leader in that group.
Yeah, so in Brandon's exit interview, he said that he did actually want to split the votes,
Mm.
but Tribal just came up so fast that they never fully were able to organize it. And so by the time they voted, he was like, oh, I guess we didn't split the votes, much to his own chagrin, right? And so I would say in terms of that, like knowing that Lauren is immune and that he's probably the target of an idol play, I think the biggest fault in this episode that I could give to him is probably just you got to be on top of that. You got to make sure that the votes are being split because you are the most in danger if something goes wrong. And hey, maybe if they split the votes, they still lose because Carson and Jam Jam want them to lose, and so they could try to split the votes, but Carson and Jam Jam might be able to like mess it up for them somehow, which is part of why if you do split the votes, you make sure that Carson and Jam Jam are splitting votes in a different direction, right?
Mhm.
Like you always want to make sure the people that you can rely on the least are going in a direction that will impact you the least. But it seemed like they really trusted Carson. So I assume that that an attempted split vote would still probably fail, but I think you want to at least attempt it here.
Well, I mean, this is not great news for Brandon, but a split vote potentially gives you more. Like, I mean, the problem with not splitting the votes is that there's potential that the Tikas got away with. We're still working with you, which might be bad for Ratu. So for
Mhm.
the 3 who are left, the not splitting the vote, not only did this plan like Ratu went out, but also seemed to give some power to Tika. The other piece of what Brandon potentially did wrong, along with the other Ratus, is the question of, is Franny the right person to have targeted the vote on? I think that there is, it feels like the logic is she's a good player. Her partner, her closest ally just went home, and a little bit of like finish what we started to a degree. We got rid of Matt. Now we'll get rid of Franny. I mean, it's not a great, the fact that Danny is willing to play an idol on Franny, I think it's very surprising to me, just based on what we've seen on the show of Danny and Franny's relationship. I do feel like I had the impression that Danny would be much more of a self-preservation guy than he would have been willing to play an idol on somebody. So I don't know that read, but is there anybody else that they could have targeted that people would have went along with the votes?
I think Franny is probably the right call. I think they're looking for the person least likely to have an idol played on them. And I do think that's probably Franny. But I mean, they knew that Matt was saying Franny was willing to turn on Danny.
Right.
Were they using that info? Like, should they have been using that info if they hadn't been? Because if they talk about, I mean, maybe that gives away that they're voting Franny, right? But maybe when you come back from the split tribe thing, you say, yeah, Matt was campaigning left and right, that him and Franny had already approached multiple people about targeting Danny. We weren't sure what was happening. Maybe that's your explanation for why you took him out. Maybe they believe you, maybe they don't, but then maybe Danny has a conversation with Franny and now she has to lie. And maybe that tension builds a little bit and maybe he's a little less likely to want to play his idol for her. But again, maybe that also gives away that you're targeting Franny. They already knew because they had the information from Carson, but you didn't know that. So there's lots of little things that maybe could have happened, maybe didn't happen. Who knows? But at the end of the day, I think the biggest thing for Brandon in this episode is that it's the split vote thing. You just got to make sure that the vote is split properly, and it wasn't. So I think that it may be a little bit okay. So I guess I missed the obvious thing, which is trusting Carson way too much.
Right.
Because that's such a given that I was like, okay, so Brandon trusting Carson way too much, not locking in a split vote. I think I could, give Brandon a 4, especially because I wouldn't want to go too much lower because again, I don't think he would have even been the person to be voted out here if not for Lauren winning immunity. And so a few things had to go wrong here. He trusted in the wrong person. He didn't lock in a split vote. But given how short the time is before tribal, we've heard this a lot that plans didn't have time to develop properly. So I'll give a little bit of leeway on that. But that's something that anybody going to play Survivor now needs to know. You have a very limited amount of time before tribal.
Yeah. Well, also though, I mean, the impression is that they come back, they wash up, and then immediately they're come out of the water and they're like, yeah, it's Franny. So at that moment, you have to be able. I mean, I've never played Survivor, so I guess how nerve wracking it is to actually throw out a name, let alone 2 names, to be yeah, well, okay, it's Franny, but then also it's Heidi, or Danny. It is tricky. So yeah, I feel like you gotta pull it off right off the bat. You're making the plan. That's the plan. The split vote has to be in the plan. So I think I'll go with you with a 4. I'm tempted to just, I think it's there's just this confidence to them. They sort of appear, from what we see as well on the show, they appear to be too strong of a fort, too intact together, I think is the other thing that caused them. But I think from Brandon's point of view, I don't, makes sense that he would do that. So yeah, I'll give him a 4.
Yeah, I think another thing we could probably talk about is and I might have mentioned this before, but given how much less time there is before tribal nowadays, I think there's a ton of validity to not quite the buddy system 2.0, but just filibustering. Don't give a group of people space to talk. Just follow them around. Just divide and conquer even. Hey, if I'm Soka and I don't want to give Ratu the chance to be able to orchestrate a split vote, all right, Danny, you stick with Lauren. Franny, you stick with Kane. Heidi, you stick with Jamie. We'll just make sure that they can't secretly, maybe they can't even figure out like who to vote for secretly because we're just following them
Or they
around,
do and someone doesn't understand, so it causes
Yeah.
panic. Like, there's a lot to be said about like, just not giving people breathing room. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not literally. Let people breathe.
Yeah, this isn't the hold your breath challenge. All right, so Brandon at a 4 there.
Yeah.
Let's see. The question now is, does Tika side it's pendulum, and do they side with Ratu next week, or do they continue to take out Ratu? My guess would be right now, as long as they actually are still getting credit with Soka for working with them, I think they probably go one more on Ratu because Lauren has that extra vote, and Danny just played his idol. So we know that Danny no longer has an idol. They think that Jamie has an idol. They think that Lauren has an extra vote. So Ratu remains the more dangerous group, I think, between the two. So I would assume that they're going to put votes onto probably Lauren again this time to get rid of that double vote. You don't want to risk putting on Jamie if you think she has an idol. And then if you get rid of Lauren, then you probably pendulum back over to Soka. So I think I'd have Lauren next in terms of lowest on the tribe, just because I think she's the most likely to be targeted next. And is probably in some danger moving forward. Her extra vote no longer really does anything for her because Tika is just straight up controlling these votes. The only way forward for Ratu is going to Soka and teaming up with them against Tika, and that doesn't seem like it's likely to happen at this point. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think I was thinking who are the biggest, like, so if you are Tika and you're trying to pendulum, at this point, if the two sides are even, who is the biggest threat in the game? I think that there's an argument that those people are on Soka. That probably is mostly from me as a TV viewer. Like the edit is very strong for Danny and Franny, I think, more so than any of Kane, Jamie, or Lauren. So then if you're in the game, Lauren has the extra vote. Jamie potentially, if they figure out and get wind that she has an idol, even if it's fake, if they think it's real, another reason why they might want to target there. The idol as well might be a reason why they actually think that they can't split their votes because of the extra vote. So it could get really interesting. I do think, I mean, I don't want to be preview spoiling, but there is something that like Tika's maybe not as like, clean as they think, but also that could just be a ploy from the preview or the next time on to make me think that Tika's in danger when they're absolutely not in danger. So all of that to say, while I do think there are bigger threats on Soka, I would agree probably that Lauren with the extra vote is probably the thing that's most front of mind. And if you vote out a Soka member, then the second, the extra vote becomes more powerful again. So I think it's right that you have to go after Lauren. So I would agree that she's in the worst spot on of who's left on Ratu.
Yeah, and so I think I would probably give her about a 4 here as well. I think that losing Brandon is not good. Ratu now in a bad spot, her being a likely target, not splitting the vote properly, all bad signs. But if we are wrong and Tika decides to go with Ratu next week, then she's back in a decent spot, at least for temporarily. So
the show does not tell us this, but I'm going to give her 1 extra bonus point for picking potentially the best partner, although it seems that it's whoever was left, but she did pick the best partner and then was able to beat her partner in the final. It was very fun. The idea that like Danny wants to get Lauren out. Danny almost agrees, like, yeah, even if and it's not throwing the challenge. He does not throw the challenge. He's like, yeah, I'm going to try to win. I think I can beat Lauren at the end, and then ends up losing to Lauren. I'll give her like some points for that. So I'll give her 5 points just because of that.
There you go.
Yeah.
I think I would have Jamie next, mostly because her idol is fake, and because I think of the rest of of Jamie and Lauren and Kane. I think Kane's connection to Carson is the thing. Like if I'm Tika, if I'm Carson in particular, as I pendulum, I'm gonna want Kane to be one of the last people standing, so that I can work with Kane in the end game if I need to. And given that Carson seems to be currently the person who has the most amount of sway with both other original tribes, I would say that that Kane is probably in a decent spot. Now that could ultimately put a target on Kane's back, his connection to Carson. It could make Jam Jam and Carolyn be like, we got to take out Kane to weaken Carson. But for right now, I think it keeps him the safest. So I think I would have Jamie Lynn also at a 4 and Kane at a 5. I think Ratu, just for me, I'm predicting Ratu in some trouble. And so that's, I think, about where I've got him.
I think I'll swap them. Only I know
Okay.
Jamie has the idol. She has not said presumably anything about the Matt. Okay, wait, but Matt. So
Matt
who
told
knows?
Carson that Jamie has an idol. So Carson thinks Jamie has a real idol. She thinks she has a real idol, but it's actually fake.
Right. So, okay, yeah, that's bad. So maybe I'll just give them both a 4. I think the thing about Kane is I think we've seen this, unless I'm mistaken, that people have targeted him as a strategist, as somebody who knows the game and is good at the game. I can't remember when that comes up, but I'm pretty sure it's come up. And for
Mm.
that reason, I feel like, yes, I would agree that he has a good relationship with Carson, but I do feel like that depends on whether Carson can sway enough. I feel like Kane yeah, Lauren probably has the biggest because of the extra vote. But if they all had nothing, I feel like Kane is maybe the biggest target out of all of them. But then again, that's not what is true. It's he doesn't have anything real or fake. So yeah, maybe I don't know. I'll give him a 4. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Soka then. And I think that I would leave Heidi at the bottom here. That we gave her quite the thrashing in the previous podcast about her use of the advantage. And now in this episode, she apparently was not supposed to leak out the idol information to Jam Jam. And Danny is upset with her about this. And theoretically, this could have blown the whole thing. So not another good episode for Heidi. She coming off of an episode where she, just tried to make a move in front of everyone and failed. Now she is even her closest allies kind of like, she's just not good at this. It's just not looking great for Heidi overall. It's not quite as disastrous as the previous episode, but I'm going to give her, I think, a 3. Just not a good episode for Heidi.
Yeah, it's too bad. I actually think that in like confessionals, when she's talking about the game, I think Heidi actually has a strong grasp on the game and then makes these little decisions that I understand the motive. Like there's a world where if you do think that Carson and Jam Jam, it's again, what's the point of telling anybody about the idol? It's to build trust because we're about to pull off this move. So from that's why Heidi ultimately is to make sure that it all works, and she almost does blow it, but ultimately is it maybe the right move to have told Jam Jam? Like the plan does not blow up, and does it give maybe too much like wiggle room for someone like the fact that Jam Jam and Carson are both able to sort of hide their allegiance to Ratu? Maybe that is bad as opposed to just letting although Carson already knew, but Heidi doesn't know Carson knows, right, at that point?
It's honestly a little confusing because, yeah, she's telling Carson and Jam Jam, and then Carson goes to Brandon and says, yeah, Jam Jam knows now because Heidi told him, as though he had already known, but that Jam Jam hadn't.
When you said Brandon, do you mean Danny? No, who do you mean?
Yeah, sorry. I mean Danny, yes.
Yes.
And so like, why didn't Heidi know that Carson already knew unless she did know and she was just pretending like she was telling both of them at the same time? Yeah, I don't know.
I also wonder how much she was overhearing the fact. So when Carson and Jam Jam are at the well and Heidi is like in the background and she's like, can I come in? And they're like, well, yeah, obviously you can come in. We actually maybe prefer you don't, but yeah, you can come because it'd be rude to say no. And she like hustles over and they're like, yeah, we don't know. We just don't actually want to like make anybody mad, is what they say. And that's the impetus for Heidi to say that. So I guess the point I'm making is I will also give Heidi a 3, but I also think that there's a world where that's actually, like, I actually can see the logic in it. And it's actually that she's getting played in that moment potentially by Carson and Jam. Like, they're saying, like, I don't know if we're going to go along with that plan. Like, I don't know if we can do it, which is maybe Carson already knows an idol's going to be played. So then he's like if he doesn't tell that their Jam's going to vote with Ratu anyway, so then that's covered for like not telling. Yeah, we don't know, and it's not like, well, I told you I was going to vote with them the whole time. But I feel like I'm actually more impressed with like Carson and Jam in that moment than I'm like think it's a completely bad move from Heidi, because she comes over and they're like, we don't know, and essentially she's like, okay, well, I have to get you on board, so here's this information that I actually think, again, to the point of playing an idol sometimes, is to build trust with your ally. So again, I'll give her a 3. I don't think it's great gameplay, but I also don't think it's like super, super bad. Actually, like, it makes me more impressed with Jam and Carson.
All right. So between Danny and Franny, it's interesting. I think Franny is in a better position to survive moving forward, but Danny in this episode makes a great play. I mean, using an idol on somebody else to take out a number from the other side. He plays about as well as he can, I think, in this episode. Apart from the fact that he probably could have gotten away with swinging this vote without having to use his idol, without having to give it away. Obviously, there's no way for him to really know that. And I think that given his position and his level of knowledge, I think that like you have to just swing for the fences. You can't be holding something in reserve, and then if he goes for Carson and Jam's votes and then doesn't get them, and while he had an idol the whole time, then it's like, well, you dumb, you had an extra advantage that you could have played in this situation. So I'm going to give Danny some bonus points for the episode, even though I think his chances of making it to the end from here at Final 9 probably kind of low at this point.
I don't know. I think he could go pretty far. Sorry, far.
You think?
That was nice. Well timed.
Thank you. Sorry, I've done it again. I've made a stupid joke and we're off track.
No.
Yeah.
So, and then on the other side, like Franny being saved here, is great for her because now Danny's the bigger target. But I mean, she's still very much in the line of fire. So I think ultimately I'm going to give Franny a 5 and Danny a 6, in this spot. That's what I'm going to go.
I think that so Danny, when he finds his idol, he's like, he makes a joke about like, I'm not going to tell anybody, right? And that's the right move. But also, when you're ready to make a move with the idol, I actually think in this era of gameplay, it is a good idea to not completely, like, there's this delicate balance you have to make between you want it to be your move. So at the end of the game, you can say, that was my move. I played the idol. But also, if you do it so secretively and it's like, if you make it an even bigger moment where even your own allies are like, I didn't know that was going to happen, and they're kind of blindsided by the moment, I feel like that raises your threat level maybe more than you want in this era of the game. That there's this delicate balance I think you have to play when you're gonna make a big when you need to make a big move because you think your back's against the wall. And I think the whole piece of this is they don't really trust Jam. I think it's the biggest reason why the idol ends up, Danny feels like he needs to play it, because if he's really, really unsure about Jam and there's an extra vote out there, that's the riskiest piece, right? So he decides he's going to play it, and now that he's going to play it, I feel like that's a difficult situation where it's like, now if I don't play it or if I play it for myself, I look like a big jerk and people might not want to work for me. So it's this balance. Once he has said he's going, now he has it, he knows he kind of needs to use it, and now that he said he's going to use it, and I actually think like this works out about as well as, but I like it's Heidi who ultimately almost puts it in jeopardy, right? And I feel like in the position that Soka is in, they're the ones being targeted. I think he has to tell Heidi he doesn't have to, but I think it makes sense that he did. I'll give Danny a what did you give? You gave him a 6?
A
I feel like I
6.
want to give him a 7. Franny, I'm less sure of. I definitely feel one thing I was going to ask you. I mean, I feel like the answer is it's more impressive to play an idol on somebody, but it's pretty impressive to get an idol played on you. I feel like it's like a really underrated. It feels like it feels like it could be the same as being taken to the end and not having to do fire. But I feel like it's
Yeah.
such the idol is such a valuable asset that if your ally is willing to play it on you, it says a lot about your game. And so, yeah.
Well, I think it can. I think at the same time, there are situations where an idol gets played on you simply because people know you're a loyal number, which is still good on you for being a loyal number, but not necessarily like, oh, I really did the work to get this relationship in tip top shape. It's like, well, I have literally 2 other people in this game from my original tribe. If I want to maintain my numbers, I need to save one of them. Sort of like when Parvati plays 2 idols, it's
Right.
not like she really cared about her villain tribe there. It was mostly just like, I need to make sure my numbers stay strong.
This is a weird time in the game. I feel like a lot of idol plays on other people have been early in the game. I'm like David Wright's idol play is really early in the game. This early, like mid jury stage is a bit of an interesting time that Franny gets an idol played on her. I feel like we've just seen a lot of people hoard their idols, which is why that probably doesn't happen. I also wonder, does Franny have the best relationships with the Tikas is the other thing I wonder about within that group. I mean, Heidi is the one to divulge information to Jam Jam and Carson, but we don't see any of that really this episode. We see them as like a 6 being like 6 can get out 4. I guess I'll give Franny a 6. I mean, she is the target. Yeah. What did you get? You gave her a 5?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a 5 makes more sense. I do still think it's impressive to get an idol played. I mean, yeah, I think it's impressive. I'll give her 6. Give Franny 6.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about Tika then, and I think they are in the right order for me here. Now, I don't want to discredit Carolyn because I think the fact that she votes for Brandon is an indication to us that she was in on the plan, even though we didn't see any of it. So clearly she's still working with them successfully. She's part of why they're able to maintain their cover as a trio. So I want to make sure that we're giving her that credit. Obviously, as you mentioned, terrible for her edit that she is not seen nowhere near this entire operation, despite the fact that she's probably in on it.
But she does take care of Carson and agrees to team up with him. So great for the Sia money potential.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Yeah.
That
Was sweet. That was sweet when she's like, I'll carry Carson on my back. It was very nice. And then she got stuck in the net.
I forgot about that. She Kathy'd herself.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was a great moment in the episode.
I love there's a moment where Carson's like so quietly speaks like, I think they've been turning their body in the net, and there's a long pause and she goes, what? I really love it.
So I want to make sure she gets the credit for all of those things. The problem is that probably part of the reason why she's not getting much credit in the edit is that I don't think she's getting much credit in the game either.
Yeah.
That clearly these conversations are happening with Carson. They're happening a little bit with Jam Jam. I think probably unfairly, this has kind of been the story of Carolyn all season long. People underestimating her, not really crediting her for things. And because of that, I think she's going to have a tougher time winning in the end. Like, it doesn't seem like she has a chance of beating Carson or even Jam Jam at this point. And then so that's like, who does she go with? Maybe Heidi, maybe Jamie.
Yeah, the
but how does she
toughest
get
road
there?
is the toughest is that she's got to pick up the stragglers who it's so hard to think how she gets them. Because I feel like I think the top 2 from Tika and the top 2 from Soka, I don't think she can. I would agree she has the least likely chance of being able to win up against either of them. So she needs some form of Heidi and like literally that's like kind of it. I feel like I don't know, like the Ratus and Heidi is like who Carolyn can beat. So that's tricky. That's a really tricky path to try and walk, I think, from to the end here.
Now, there is one thing she has going for her, which is that she has the only remaining idol, I believe,
That's right.
left in the game that nobody knows about. And that could be her key to winning some big credit. So I think that she's not out of it yet. I think this is a good episode for her overall. The fact that she has this, I'll go for a 7 for Carolyn. I'll give her a 7.
I think I'll just be. I really well. I was gonna rate her a little bit lower, but I do feel like I don't want to be like, yeah. But just the fact that she's not seen in this episode. Once we get back to get, it's other than being around in these scenes, she's not. There's no strategic decision making that she's involved with. So I'll drop her down 1 point and give her a 6. I do think there is some potential. I mean, with the idol, I do think there definitely is potential for her to be able to. Make some moves that give her some credit. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Then we have Jam Jam, and so Jam Jam. It's pretty clear that people don't really trust Jam Jam a lot, at least from what we're seeing in the episode. But I do think that Jam Jam getting to the end, like he's so likable. I think people will want to vote for him if he's there. Even like I could even see like in a final 3 of Carson, Jam Jam, Carolyn. I think Carson obviously has the best case at this point, but people might be burned by him, whereas they're not as burned by Jam Jam because they saw Jam Jam coming more, and they might not respect Carolyn unfairly. So I think Jam Jam has a great shot to win in the end. But in terms of his actual play in this episode, it seems like most of that credit should go more toward Carson. And then also like his positioning might continue to remain a little precarious as he still could be like a backup target here or there. So I'm also going to give him a 7 for now. But definitely watching out for Jam Jam at this point.
There is a case to be made that Jam Jam was the most swing vote in the middle of the swing vote, in the sense that he could have revealed the idol play to Ratu, and he does not, and so he's maybe more responsible for Brandon going out than anybody. So yeah, interesting. He's definitely, I mean, and it's so funny because the way he's speaking is sort of eliciting a lack of trust, to the point where I love your point that, like, yeah, if Carson starts betraying people, they might be spurned. And the fact that Jam Jam has been like, if you're gonna lie to me, you gotta lie to my face. Lie better than that. Be like, that's just Jam Jam. And so yeah, I respect that, and I want him to win. And he definitely has. There's a lot of underdog story to Jam Jam, I think, in terms of he was like, on sort of the losing side of that 2-2 vote with the idol play, when who went out at that vote? Can't remember. Josh plays his idol and Carolyn votes with him. He says in this episode, like, I've been to all but 2 tribal councils and I've survived all of them, which, yes, but also anybody in any confessional, anybody could say, I have survived every tribal council I've been to. But alas, he's getting a big underdog story, I think. And I think that could play well at the end. I gave Carolyn a 6. I think I'll give Jam Jam. I am also going to give him I feel like I'm being really harsh on everybody. So maybe I'll bump Carolyn up to a 7 and also give Jam Jam a 7 to make myself feel better. I do that? Yeah, I'm going to do that.
All right, that leaves us with Carson. And last week I gave him an 8 because I felt like his positioning was very good, but there wasn't anything he did actively to like get him higher than an 8. And in this episode, I feel like he did it. He gave me the active play, actively flushing an idol on one side while still potentially maintaining cover in the middle, keeping Tika a secret. They all get some amount of credit for that, but I don't think it's possible without Carson, because Carson is the one that both original tribes trust the most and are giving the most amount of information to. I think that it's pretty clear that he is an essential part of why this works and could work. I don't feel comfortable going like up to a 10 by any means, because I don't know how this is going to play out. In fact, a 9 might even be high if this all crashes down onto him in the following episode. So I am going to go with a 9 for Carson. I feel like position-wise, really good. Really excellent play here. The fact that his social game is clearly excellent. He's gotten both Ratu and Sokka to trust it. I don't even know why or how Sokka trusts him so much. But they I was so surprised when Danny goes to Carson and Carson's like, yeah, Jam Jam knows. And Danny's like, no, how did Jam Jam find out? I'm like, wait a minute, what?
I mean, yeah.
How are you totally chill with Carson knowing?
True.
So yeah.
Yeah, where does that connection come from? Because he's which tribe did he get swapped to, right? Ratu?
He swapped to Ratu.
Yeah, I don't understand that. I don't get. But I mean, it's impressive. He's sick this episode. Still able to kind of competes in the challenge. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think I think to the point of why we docked Brandon some points. Like, if there's really a thing he did the most wrong, it's that they didn't split the vote. And I think to that case, the fact that they trust Carson so much to feel like we don't have to split, like we didn't have to think about splitting them, but like we're so locked in on our numbers, we're good to go. I feel like it is to Tika's credit and to Carson's credit. So you gave him a 9. Gosh, it'd be a big. I gave the highest I think I've given so far is a 7. But I'll give Carson a 9. I feel like he deserves it. I feel like it's a really good week. It's the most fun. I am worried that Tika is not quite as in the middle as this episode would make it seem, mostly from the, when you actually start digging, all you can do out there is think. And when you start digging through some of the stuff that you're talking about, Taran, of like, why is there 6 votes on Franny? Why weren't there, it's all of this stuff. I feel like it's not quite as clean of a move. But the move, other than Idol being played, the move doesn't really happen without Carson being the one to sort of be in the middle with information from both sides to get it done. So yeah, a 9.
Yeah, it feels almost like when I was giving Jesse 9s, and I was like, I can see where this could all go wrong for him. So it might go down next episode, and then it never did, or at least it didn't until it did. So who knows? If everything works out, then yeah, this 9 is definitely deserved. If it all comes crashing down because the way that they vote split was weird and he doesn't have a proper explanation, then he'll drop next time. But for now, yeah, Carson, a 9.
It's just the cool music.
So cool. All right. That's the Stockwatch. We did it.
Very fun. We didn't go quite as long as you and Shannon went.
No, not quite as long. Close though.
Close. So close.
Yeah.
You got another 2 hours.
It's only about 2 hours off.
that tracks though. Yeah.
Well, anything else you want to talk about?
No, I don't think so. Very fun episode, fun chatting it through. It's interesting because I was like, what a straightforward vote. You come out and you're like, here's all the problems I have. This is like when we do The Last of Us. I'm like, very fun episode. And you'd be like, the glass shouldn't have been on that side of the door. I'd be like, yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a great point, Taran. Yeah.
Well, if you didn't catch our coverage of The Last of Us, we had a lot of fun covering The Last of Us. So check out those podcasts if you haven't watched yet, or if you did watch but didn't listen to our podcasts.
Be a video game player, but or don't care about having the video game spoiled. So
yeah, or just listen to the first portion.
Oh yeah, listen to the first part. Yeah, sure.
Where we don't spoil the video game. So that's what we got. I will be back next week for next week's Survivor Stockwatch. Hopefully we get some more good twists where everyone votes. And check out the Big Brother coverage. Find me over on Twitch, twitch.tv/Taran Armstrong, hanging out, having fun. Grace, what are you up to?
Yellow Jackets, Succession. Yellow Jackets, we did an interview with Nicole Maines, who you interviewed on the Taran show. Nicole was amazing. She was so fun. She dropped a couple F-bombs and used the word self-masturbatory on the podcast. So that was great. I loved it. Succession, movies, and we're doing a Dark Rewatch podcast. So all of that stuff you can, if you're interested, I'm on Twitter @HiFromGrace.
All right. Well, that's what we have for you then. Thank you all so much for joining us here today. And I will see all of you next time. But hey,
don't get cocky.